Are you my daughter? Billionaire asks Waitress after seeing her pendant. What happens next will shock you. Sophie had always felt out of place, working as a waitress in a cozy cafe in New York. Raised by a single mother, life had always been a struggle, but Sophie never questioned the quiet bond she shared with her mother, until one evening when everything changed. Richard, a regular customer, noticed Sophie's pendant as she placed his coffee on the table. It was an old, faded heirloom, passed down from her mother but never discussed. Richard stared at it, his face pale, then asked in a trembling voice, "Where did you get that pendant?" Sophie, surprised, glanced down at the pendant she always wore. "It's from my mom," she replied, unsure of why the question seemed so urgent. Richard, eyes wide, leaned forward and whispered, "Are you my daughter?" Sophie froze, heart racing. This stranger, a wealthy businessman, was asking if she was his daughter. How could he know? And what could it mean? Sophie sat at the small cafe counter, her hands trembling slightly as she replayed Richard's words in her mind. "Are you my daughter?" The question had lingered in the air, thick and heavy, making it hard to breathe. She glanced at the pendant again, its intricate design suddenly feeling much more significant than it ever had before. Richard had been a regular at the cafe for months, a quiet, serious man who rarely made small talk. Sophie had never imagined he would look at her and see something, someone, beyond the waitress behind the counter. And yet, today, he seemed certain. His voice trembled with emotion when he asked her about the pendant. "It's identical to the one my daughter wore," he said, his eyes searching hers for some sign of recognition. Sophie felt her stomach drop. Her mother had never spoken much about their past, and Sophie had never asked. Raised on the idea that family was just the two of them, she never questioned it. But now, this man, the one person who could disrupt everything she thought she knew about her life, was asking about a pendant that had been passed down through generations in her family. What could this mean? Richard leaned in closer, his expression softening. "I know it's a lot to take in," he said, his voice low. "But the pendant, it belonged to my daughter. She was taken from me years ago." His voice wavered. "I've never stopped searching for her." Sophie's heart pounded in her chest. Her mother had never said a word about a father, never mentioned the possibility of a life outside their small apartment. Sophie felt like the ground was shifting beneath her. Could this man, this billionaire, really be her father? With a shaky breath, Sophie shook her head, unsure of what to say. "I don't understand," she whispered. Richard gave her a sad smile. "I know this is a shock, but I think you deserve to know the truth. That pendant, it's the same as the one I gave my daughter before she disappeared. I don't know how, but I believe you're the one I've been searching for all these years." Sophie felt a rush of confusion and disbelief. Could this be real? Was Richard really her father? And if so, why had her mother kept this secret from her? The questions were endless, but one thing was clear: everything she knew about herself, about her family, was about to change forever. Sophie walked home that evening with her mind spinning. The city lights blurred in front of her as she replayed Richard's words over and over. "Are you my daughter?" The question echoed through her thoughts, unanswered, like a heavy drumbeat in her chest. When she got back to her small apartment, her mother was sitting at the kitchen table, her face drawn and tired. Sophie sat down across from her, her hands trembling slightly. The pendant around her neck felt too heavy, almost suffocating. "Mom," Sophie began, her voice softer than she intended, "I need to know the truth. About the pendant. About my father." Her mother's eyes flickered with something. Fear, guilt, maybe even regret. For a moment, the silence between them stretched out, thick and suffocating. Sophie's heart raced. She had always felt like there was something her mother wasn't telling her, something hidden in their past. Now, everything was beginning to unravel. Her mother set down the cup of tea she had been holding, her hands shaking. "I never wanted to tell you this, Sophie," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "But you deserve to know." Sophie leaned forward, her eyes wide, waiting for the truth. Her mother took a deep breath. "Richard, he's your father. I never told you because I wanted to protect you. There were people who wanted to harm him, people who would have hurt you. I didn't want you to be caught in that world. Sophie's world seemed to tilt on its axis. Richard, her father? The man who had seemed so distant, so powerful, was really her father? The father she had never known, the father her mother had kept from her all these years? I didn't want to put you in danger, her mother continued, her voice breaking. I thought if I left him, if I kept you away from him, you'd be safe. But he's never stopped looking for you, Sophie. And now he's found you. Sophie stood up, her legs unsteady beneath her. Why didn't you tell me this before? She asked, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. All these years, you kept this from me. You made me think I was nobody. Why? Her mother's face crumpled, and she wiped away a tear. I didn't want you to be part of his world, Sophie. It's dangerous. It's not what you think it is. He's a billionaire, but the people he's involved with, they're not good. I was trying to protect you from all of that. Sophie felt her heart racing as everything she thought she knew about her life crumbled away. You were protecting me from the truth. From my family. From who I really am. The words hung heavy in the air. Her mother stood up slowly, walking over to her, and placed a hand gently on her arm. I know you feel betrayed, but I did what I thought was best. I didn't want to hurt you. And I never wanted you to feel like you didn't have a family. You've always had me. But, if you want to meet him, if you want to know your father, I'll support you. But you need to understand, it won't be easy. That world isn't like ours. Sophie stood frozen, the storm of emotions swirling inside her. She felt lost, torn between the life she had known and the truth she had just learned. Richard wasn't just a man from her past, he was a part of her. And now that part of her life had been uncovered, leaving her with more questions than answers. Could she step into his world? Could she embrace a father she had never known, a world of power and danger she wasn't ready for? And if she did, would it change everything about who she was? Mom, Sophie whispered, her voice filled with uncertainty. I don't know what to do. Her mother took a deep breath. You don't have to decide right now. Just know that whatever you choose, I'll be here. Sophie nodded, feeling the weight of her mother's words. She didn't have all the answers yet, but one thing was clear, her life had just changed forever. The next few days were a blur for Sophie. She felt as though she were living in a fog, her mind clouded by everything she had learned. The cafe was quieter than usual, and each time she caught sight of Richard's empty table, her heart sank. She hadn't seen him since that conversation, and now, the weight of her choices pressed down on her like a heavy stone. Every night, she replayed her mother's words. Richard was her father. The man she had unknowingly shared a piece of her past with. But what did that mean for her? Could she truly embrace a father she had never known, a man from a world so different from hers? Her mother's warnings echoed in her mind. That world isn't like ours. Sophie could still feel the fear in her mother's voice. The last thing she wanted was to be dragged into a life of wealth and power, with all its dangers and betrayals. But was she even capable of rejecting this part of her, this new reality? As she sat on her apartment balcony, staring out at the sprawling city lights, Sophie's phone buzzed. It was Richard. Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at the screen. Should she answer? She wasn't sure she was ready for this conversation, but there was no escaping it. Taking a deep breath, she hit answer. Hello, she said, her voice shaky. Hello, Sophie. Richard's voice was calm, almost soothing, but there was a hint of something beneath it. Anxiety? Hope. I know this is a lot to process, and I understand if you need time. But I wanted to reach out. I think it's time we talk. I'm not asking you to make a decision right now, but I want you to know that I'm here. And I always will be. Sophie closed her eyes, her heart racing. What was she supposed to say? The urge to turn away, to reject this man and everything he represented, was strong. But there was another part of her, the part she couldn't ignore, that wanted to know him, wanted to understand this missing piece of herself. "I don't know what to think right now," she said quietly. It's overwhelming." "I understand," Richard replied, his voice gentle but firm. "But I believe you deserve answers. You've spent your whole life not knowing the truth. I won't push you, but if you're open to it, I'd like to meet. I want to explain everything, your past, your mother, and why I was forced to stay away." Sophie's heart beat faster. Was she ready for this? Was she ready to confront the father she never knew, to face the reality of the life she might have had? "I need time," Sophie said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I need to think." "I'll give you all the time you need," Richard assured her. "But just know, Sophie, I'm not going anywhere." As she ended the call, Sophie felt a strange mix of relief and fear. She had heard the words she needed to hear, but the weight of what they meant was still too much to bear. What if her life with her mother, the life she had always known, was about to be upended by this new truth? The next morning, Sophie stood in front of the mirror, looking at herself with new eyes. The pendant hung around her neck, its meaning changing with every passing second. She had always thought it was just a family heirloom, a small part of her mother's past. Now, it felt like a key to a door she wasn't sure she was ready to open. But Sophie knew one thing for sure. No matter how hard it was, she had to face this truth. The decision ahead wasn't about wealth or danger, it was about understanding who she really was. Who she had always been. The questions loomed, unanswered and heavy, but for the first time, Sophie felt like she was standing at the edge of something bigger than herself. She didn't know where it would lead, but she couldn't ignore it any longer. Sophie couldn't shake the weight of her decision. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, fear, doubt, and the desire for answers. She spent the night thinking, her mother's warnings echoing in her mind. Could she really step into this world Richard offered her? Or would she leave it all behind? The next morning, Sophie walked into the cafe, where Richard was waiting. His calm presence was a stark contrast to the storm inside her. "I'm here to listen," she said, her voice steady but unsure. Richard smiled gently. "I understand, Sophie. Take your time. I just want you to know the truth." Sophie sat down, her hands trembling. "Why didn't you ever try to find me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Richard's eyes darkened. "I tried, but your mother was afraid. Afraid of what my world could do to you both." Sophie absorbed his words. It wasn't just the lies, it was fear. Fear that had kept her away from her father all these years. "I don't want you to feel pressured," Richard said, his voice soft. "I just want you to understand where you come from and make your own choice." Sophie took a deep breath. "I want to get to know you, Richard. But I need to do it on my own terms." Richard's face softened in relief. "That's all I've ever wanted." Sophie smiled, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in days. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she was ready to face it, knowing her journey was her own. As weeks passed, Sophie spent more time with Richard, learning about her past and the life she could have had. It wasn't easy, there were moments of confusion, doubt, and hesitation. But through it all, Sophie realized that the truth wasn't just about the family she had discovered. It was about understanding herself, her roots, and the strength she had carried all along. She continued to work at the cafe, but now, the cafe wasn't just a place of routine. It was a reminder of her journey, the life she had built, and the love she had with her mother. Richard, too, became part of her life, slowly, carefully, and on her own terms. He never pushed her, always respecting her space and the boundaries she set. One evening, as Sophie sat with Richard in a quiet corner of the cafe, she finally realized the answer she had been searching for all along. She didn't need to choose between her past and her future. She could embrace both, carrying her mother's love with her and welcoming the connection she now had with her father. "You've come so far, Sophie," Richard said softly, his eyes full of pride. "You've made your own path, and I'm just glad I'm part of it." Sophie smiled, the weight of the journey finally lifting. "I'm glad you're here too," she said, her voice steady. The pendant around her neck, once a symbol of confusion, now felt like a key to her future. She wasn't just Sophie, the waitress from the cafe. She was Sophie, the daughter of two worlds, and she had the power to shape her own story. As the sun set over the city, Sophie knew her journey was just beginning. The past had shaped her, but it no longer defined her. And as she walked out of the cafe, ready to face whatever came next, she felt a sense of peace she had never known.